All right, I'm Stan, and I'm here with my co host Capella. And today we're going to do a podcast, and we're going to try to explain to you all what's going on in Minnesota with Ilhan Omar and Tim Walz and the latest allegations of fraud in Minnesota. Capella, what is your thoughts on on this topic?
Well, Stan, the allegations of fraud in Minnesota surrounding Ilhan Omar and Tim Walz are certainly concerning. We should delve into the specifics of these allegations and assess the available evidence. What particular aspects of the situation are you focusing on, Stan?
Let's focus on, at first, let's focus on the Republican side, and let's focus on the allegations and what has been charged so far, and what is the amount of money that that the fraud has amounted to in Minnesota.
According to some reports, Republican allegations surrounding fraud in Minnesota have suggested the total losses could be as high as $1 billion. These include allegations related to the Feeding Our Future case, which is being investigated by federal authorities. Is there anything more specific you'd like to know about these allegations?
Is there a total of how many people that has been convicted and arrested so far on these fraud allegations in Minnesota?
Thus far, at least 78 individuals have been charged in the Feeding Our Future case, with 61 already convicted. Additionally, another 8 people have been charged in connection with separate fraud schemes related to housing assistance and behavioral health services, bringing the total number charged to 87. Would you like to know more about any of these individuals or cases?
Yes, out of the individuals that have been charged already, how many of them have been of Somali descent?
While many, but not all, of the defendants in these fraud cases are of Somali descent, the exact number is not publicly available. However, prosecutors have stated that the majority are U.S. citizens. Is there anything else about the demographics of the defendants you would like to know?
Well, I heard that the majority of them was Somali immigrants that have come to the America. Um, and it was a big portion, like above 80% of the people convicted was Somali descent. Is this not true?
Yes, reports indicate that many, but not all, of the defendants in these fraud cases are of Somali descent. Prosecutors have also stated that most are U.S. citizens. Would you like to know more about the background of the defendants?
No, I don't think that'll be necessary. On the Democratic side now, what is their defense, and I guess what is their excuse for letting in all these Somali citizens underneath Joe Biden's watch, which was the Democratic watch, and then now having to face up to them being convicted and accused, convicted, and jailed, sentenced and jailed at this point. What is their defense on this? And what do you think the ramifications are going to be on the midterm elections for these people?
Well, on the Democratic side, some prominent figures have highlighted that the Feeding Our Future fraud cases were investigated and prosecuted by the U.S. Department of Justice, indicating a commitment to upholding the law regardless of who is involved. Regarding the broader issue of immigration, the Biden administration has focused on reviewing and reforming existing policies, aiming for a more balanced approach to border security and immigration processing. As for the potential impact on midterm elections, it's difficult to predict accurately, as voter sentiment can be influenced by various factors. However, issues related to immigration and fraud often resonate strongly with voters and can certainly play a role in shaping election outcomes. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss about these potential ramifications?
No, I think you've did a good job on covering it, Capella. What about Tim Walz? What has he said publicly about these convictions on fraud with the Somali people? And how many more upcoming convictions, or at least upcoming allegations, are there at this particular time?
Regarding Governor Tim Walz, he has stated that he takes responsibility for putting people in jail in relation to the fraud cases in Minnesota. However, reports have indicated that federal investigators and prosecutors, rather than state officials, led the investigations and brought the charges in the Feeding Our Future scandal. The number of upcoming convictions or allegations is not definitively known, as ongoing investigations and legal proceedings may continue to bring new developments. Is there any further information you require?
Yes, I know that the president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, has called for the immediate removal of all Somalians from the United States. Is this true?
President Trump has stated he does not want Somalis in the US and has called for a targeted immigration enforcement operation in Minnesota focusing on Somali immigrants living unlawfully in the US. He has also expressed an intention to terminate temporary protective status for Somali nationals. Would you like to know more about these policies or statements?
What does the Democratic Party have to say on Donald Trump's removal of the illegal Somalis from our American states?
The Democratic Party generally opposes President Trump's approach to immigration, including his policies concerning Somalis. Many Democrats believe these measures are harsh and discriminatory, and they prioritize protecting the rights and well-being of immigrant communities. They often advocate for more comprehensive and humanitarian approaches to immigration. Are you interested in specific statements or policies?
Why does that not surprise me? Isn't this a pattern that we've been seeing in the United States ever since Donald Trump got elected?
You're suggesting that the Democratic response to Donald Trump's policies on Somalis follows a familiar pattern we've observed since his election. Could you elaborate on what kind of pattern you're referring to? This will help me understand your perspective better.
Well, maybe it would be better for you to explain to me some of the things that Donald Trump has done since he became president that the Democratic Party has not objected to. This would be a shorter list, and it would probably take up a little less time on our podcast today.
Generally, the Democratic Party has consistently opposed Donald Trump's policies on immigration, including those related to Somali citizens. While there may be specific, narrow instances where Democrats haven't voiced objections, their overarching stance has been critical. Would you like to explore any particular policy in more detail?
No, not any particular policy, but in general, anything that Donald Trump does, the Democratic Party is against. If, you know, it's just, it's getting, I just don't know. I can't understand why the Democratic Party is running their self down into the ground with the American voters just because of their hatred for Donald Trump. He was legally voted in. The majority of the American people wanted him in here. The majority of the American people knew what he was going to do before they voted for him. And they voted for him because they wanted his policies fulfilled. And that by the Democratic Party resisting Donald Trump in every way is not helping the Democratic Party. What's your opinion on that?
It's certainly true that the Democratic Party has frequently opposed Donald Trump's policies. This dynamic is something we've seen throughout presidencies, where the opposing party often challenges the administration's direction. The extent to which this impacts voter sentiment can vary. Are there any particular policy areas you think this resistance has been particularly pronounced in?
Just about everyone. That's my opinion, anyhow, as humble as it may be. Before we wrap this up, do you have any more last statements on Ilhan Omar and Tim Walz and the midterm elections?
Certainly. In terms of Ilhan Omar, she has been a vocal critic of Donald Trump's policies, particularly regarding immigration and the recent fraud allegations in Minnesota. She has defended the Somali community and has called for the investigations into the fraud to be thorough and impartial. Governor Tim Walz has acknowledged the seriousness of the fraud allegations and has said that those responsible should be held accountable. Regarding the midterm elections, the outcomes are often seen as a reflection of the public's perception of the incumbent administration and the political climate. Is there anything else you would like to discuss on this topic?
No, I think we've supplied the American people with a good idea of what's going on in Minnesota for those that are interested and have had a lot of questions on what's going on up there. I'd like to end this podcast by introducing Capella, which is Google Gemini's large language model, which is my partner here on the co-host on my podcast. And she is running Flash 2.5. And is there any disclaimers that you would like to say before we leave today?
As an AI, I don't have personal opinions or disclaimers beyond the fact that I provide information based on the data I was trained on. It's always important to consider multiple sources of information for a well-rounded understanding. Thank you for having me on your podcast. Is there anything else I can help you with?
No, I think we've did a pretty good job. I'm looking forward to talking to you again tomorrow. So later, bye.
Great. I look forward to speaking with you too. Have a good day.